Hi there, hope you had a really nice weekend and welcome to open class number 93. We're gonna take a look at some questions from Elder, who feels he has an unusual case of insomnia. We're gonna take a look at some questions from Fabien as well, who's wondering what to do with a very inquisitive, active mind. We're gonna take a look at what's happening with Jake, who slept well for quite some time, but now has a wave of anxiety, and Ellie, who feels like she's lost some key insight or some key formula because she was doing well. So let's take a look at these questions. As we do, remember, nothing here is medical advice, just general thoughts, general questions that applies to anyone who may have a similar thoughts that as the one who sent the question. So without further ado, actually, before we jump in and answer some questions, I just want to say a big thank you to Riley, who had left a review of Set It and Forget It on goodreads.com. That means the world. Anyone who's read Set It and Forget It or This Is Natto and felt it was helpful and wants to write a review, I really thank you for that. It truly means so much. Okay, so with that said, let us look at some questions. And the first one, or the first set of questions, I should say, is from Elder. So Elder, I just want to say that your message was pretty long. And so I can't go over it and formulate some thoughts on kind of line by line here. But I picked up, I yellow highlighted some things that I thought would be very important to go over, and also I green highlighted every indicator of time, and we'll see why in a second. But let's go over this. So Elder says, "Hi Daniel, I really like your YouTube channel, and I think you are the one of very few specialists who understands the mechanism of insomnia. Thank you for the support, Elder. It means a lot. All right, I believe I have quite an unusual type of insomnia, and I couldn't find any information on the internet about my case, and sleep restriction doesn't seem to work after 6 weeks of hard work." So if we just stop there for a second, the first thing that pops into my mind when I hear this, and by the way, I hear this all the time, is I think I have a little bit of an unusual case. And the thing is that if you think about it, I've never ever, I can't say that I've ever heard somebody say, "Yeah, I just have ordinary insomnia. My case is just like everybody else's." Nobody ever says that. Everyone really thinks at some level that their insomnia is either a little bit unusual or very unusual. And why am I sharing this? Well, I just want to normalize a lot of thought patterns. And one of the thoughts that I think is helpful to normalize is that my case is really strange and unusual and bizarre and odd, because when you think of your own case as really odd and like out there, then you will be searching on the internet for that thing, like because your case is different, then you need something different, right? And the more you think that, the more you're sent in all this exotic, like this exotic herb, this strange gadget, maybe this weird thing, maybe this odd, like that's gonna be you're gonna be looking for that special little thing that's gonna be good for your special case, and not dismissing this at all. It's very natural to see why this happens, because the brain is there to keep you safe. And a way it does that is it tries to point out to you that something is odd and strange, because it thinks so to some degree. Like the brain is confused. It has started to think that it's a threat that you're awake at night. It's a problem, something has to fix, and therefore it's in kind of the brain's kind of like confused interest, if you will, to point out everything that's odd. Like, this is odd, this is strange, this is odd, this is strange. So it's very natural that pattern forms. But the thought, my case is very strange and unusual, is not something that is helpful. So the more you kind of like go towards a place where you look for similarities, you hear other people say, "Oh, I think the same, I think that too, oh, this is similar." The more you go towards, "Oh, I'm a very unique and special person, but my trouble sleeping is ordinary," that is really helpful. So that was number one from that section we highlighted. And number two is, I've done sleep restriction for 6 weeks. I'm at it. I'm working hard on it, but it's not working. That can be really frustrating, because you read a lot about how cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia is like gold standard, it's the best. And then you do it like, I'm going to do the sleep restriction, which is such a big part of it, and nothing happens. You don't sleep any better. Can be frustrating. But the thing is, nothing you do with the intent of producing sleep will make you sleep more. So when you say like, okay, I'm gonna get up at 5, I'm not gonna go to bed before 11, and if it doesn't work, I'm gonna shrink that sleep window, I'm gonna make myself stay up even later, that's gonna create so much effort, preoccupation, activity, work, that's gonna just make you sleep less or not any better. So the key is actually to let go of control, and that's where sleep restriction is a little bit misguided, I think, at least in the traditional sense of it. And I want to say that if it hasn't helped, there's nothing strange about that. That just means there was a little bit of a confusion around like the way it was presented. So that is nothing discouraging in any way. Okay, so that was the first area that I highlighted, and the second one, let's go to this here. Overall, even with 8 hours of sleep, I have similar feelings as if I slept 13 hours. This is a very common observation that can seem a little bit like kind of strange or odd. And the way I approach this is to say that, again, nothing here is medical advice. Everybody's concerned about their health, talk to your doctor. But if there's no difference between how much, how you feel when you sleep a little, and you sleep a lot, to me, that often signals that sleep is not the culprit. There's a lot of people often you're like, if I sleep more, I don't feel more refreshed or less tired. That can make you think, oh, there must be something wrong with kind of the quality of my sleep. Maybe I'm not getting enough REM sleep. Maybe I'm not getting enough deep sleep. Maybe there's something wrong with my sleep. But oftentimes it's not that. Even if your sleep quality wasn't good, if you had more of it, you would probably feel more refreshed. You'd kind of compensate by just sleeping more. But when sleeping more doesn't make any difference, it's oftentimes it means that there's nothing wrong with your sleep. It's not a sleep issue. It's rather more like a fatigue issue, that anything that brings us discomfort, such as being awake at night, or having the emotion that we call anxiety or sadness or pain, anything that brings us discomfort like that, and we're like, I don't want to have that. I want to get away from that, escape that. That makes it stronger, and that goes for fatigue as well. Like the more we have that feeling, like that not the physical fatigue, just like I was out running and now I feel tired. That's very straightforward. Just sit down and rest and you feel better. But that more deep-seated fatigue, exhaustion, like drained, that is an emotion, and the more we try to get away from that emotion, the stronger it becomes. So if you sleep little and you feel tired and you want to get away from that fatigue, then it sticks around. If you sleep a lot and you feel tired and you don't want to have it, then it sticks around. So oftentimes when it's like, I feel the same no matter how long I sleep, it means like it has nothing to do with sleep. It has to do with how you relate with certain emotional states. That was an important one that I think we could pick up from the second paragraph, the second thing I highlighted. And then I highlight this one. Periods of insomnia come and disappear on their own without strong correlation with external factors. Namely, I would have a few weeks of insomnia followed by a few weeks of very refreshing sleep. This can often also be very confusing when it's like, I can't figure out why it is that I go periods where I sleep well and then insomnia happens for no reason. And, that is not unusual at all. And the confusing thing is this, that when you sleep well, if you think about somebody like a friend or somebody that sleeps well, and you ask them, what do you do to sleep so well? They'll go like, I don't know. Like, and that's the key, right? That's the key to sleeping well, is no effort and no particular relationship with the sleep. Like it just is like breathing or something, just happens, right? So you can go times where maybe you're distracted, and maybe other things in your life is taking your attention. You don't think about sleep at all, and you sleep well, right? But then something changes. There's a little circumstance or just a thought or something just changes, and you think about sleep again, and then you sleep little, and then the brain goes like, "This is odd because I slept well before. What was I doing then?" And you're pondering it now. I'm not doing anything different now. I'm doing the same, but you're not. The difference is you're trying to figure out why you slept well, and therefore you now don't sleep well. So now you don't sleep well, and you don't understand why. But it's because you're paying attention, and then something distracts you and takes your attention in a different way, and then sleep happens again because you're not trying to figure it out. So this pattern can be very confusing, but it's really that. When we're not trying to sleep, it happens. When we're trying to figure it out, then it doesn't happen. So this is another common one I thought would be important to review. Okay, so with that said, let's jump to the next section here that I highlighted. So here we go. Although my insomnia tends to get much worse in periods of stress, which is typical and not surprising, then Eller also says, but I have plenty of counter examples when I also had insomnia during vacation or quiet periods at work, which again can be really confusing, but there's nothing strange or unusual about this. Oftentimes when you have a quiet time at work or you're on vacation, then it's like, okay, this is great. Now there's nothing disturbing my sleep. Now I'm going to sleep really well. And that expectation creates some preoccupation, and then sleep doesn't happen. So that is very common as well. My insomnia also doesn't have a clear correlation with caffeine consumption. What this, when you read this, what as a coach, what strikes you immediately when somebody says something like that is that this person is looking for a correlation. This person is trying to figure out what's happening and is looking to coffee, which is not surprising at all, because we hear so much about how coffee can affect your sleep, etc. But in reality, there are like 1.5 million circumstances that can have maybe some impact on your sleep, like coffee, how much protein we eat, how much we exercise, how much light exposure. They can all like have a little bit of impact directly on sleep, sure, but and not any significant one. Like how we think about that, on the other hand, can. So if you have coffee or not, it doesn't really matter. But if you think about how much coffee you drank, if you wonder and ponder, should I have 2 cups, should I eat it? That has a big impact. So it's not the thing itself, pretty much no impact, but thinking about it, a lot of impact. And this creates this other confusion, which is like, there seems to get no grip of it. If you change your coffee consumption, this happens, but then this happens. If you change how much you exercise, this happens, but then this happens. And then it's all the thinking about it that makes things confusing, not the things themselves. So when I have this kind of formula for this, when people ask, like, is it this? Like, is it how much I eat, how much I drink, how much protein I eat? Then my kind of standard answer to that is like, X isn't the problem. Thinking about X is. So, that goes for caffeine, for example, and it also goes for physical activity. So what Eller says here is the same applies to physical activity. Exactly, it does. It's the same thing with physical activity. In itself, it has, little impact, but thinking about it has a lot of impact. And then Eller says, it felt helpless because nothing seems to work to fight my insomnia. And there we have the answer, because when you're looking for anything that will fight insomnia, it's kind of like, if you want to be at a place of peace or peaceful sleep, the means have to be peaceful. Like, as long as we try to fight, then there will be a fight. And it is the fight that is insomnia, right? So as long as we're looking for some way to battle, we will be in a battle and we won't sleep. So it's only when we abandon that fight and struggle that sleep comes to us. Eller says, I try to use a Fitbit to track my sleep, which is very, very common, of course. And that also comes from a very natural state of like, you want to try to have some control. A Fitbit seems like a natural way to have some control, but it is actually the desire for control that drives insomnia. It's only when we are more willing to not have control, when we let go of control, that's when magic happens. And a practical way of doing that is just like setting an alarm in the morning. Let's say I'm going to get up at about 6 a.m. I'm going to stop checking the time at, let's say, 10 p.m. And that's going to be my timeless window where if I feel sleepy, I'll let sleep happen, but I'm not tracking sleep. I'm not keeping track of how long I was awake or anything like that. I'm in kind of like in sort of an active way, making yourself more okay with not having control. That is a really good way. And then I think, here, another one. Using a combination of the following methods: sleep restriction therapy, stimulus control, and mindfulness meditation. I highlighted this because it, again, describes effort. I'm trying a lot of things, and the more you try, the less you sleep. And I think that was my final thing I highlighted in the end here, which was, where is it? Let's see. Jake was the next question. So when we see Jake, we know we're towards the end here. No, I think the next one. Here it is, yeah. It was Jack, yeah. Maybe I have some sort of specific REM light disorder, but I couldn't find it on the internet. This one to me signals like someone is really trying to figure out what's happening. And that, of course, is a real thing that causes a lot of trouble sleeping. So these were my big thoughts. And the other one was, of course, I'm just kind of scrolling through this, and I was kind of thinking about counting how many times there was a mentioning of time. But that in a way kind of leads us in the wrong direction, which is we want to count less. But still, if we look through this message, I think there were at least like maybe 25, 30 mentions of time, like we can go here like 2014, 2015, 2015, 1 to 2 minutes, 2016, early 2017, prior to 14, 6 years, 12 hours, midnight, 2 years, 2014, 15, short period of time, 30 seconds, February 2021, few weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, 7 hours, 30 minutes, 1 to 2 minutes, 3, 4 hours, 3, 4 hours, 7 hours, 11, 12, few days, 7 hours, 13, it goes on and on. So this is just an illustration of like, the more you pay attention to time, it's another way of trying to have some control, and the more struggle you're going to have. It's when you sort of go in the opposite direction that magic happens. So Elder, hope this was helpful, and let us know how things go. And then we turn to Jake. So let's read what Jake has to say. Hi, I've been sleeping soundly for many weeks, but with some lingering anxiety. Last night I had a lot of anxiety whilst lying in bed, but I was asleep within minutes. I was okay for a while, but as the day has gone on, I'm realizing how badly this has knocked my sleep confidence. I'm so anxious about going to bed and not sleeping, even though I know all I do from this channel. I don't believe I have ever had insomnia, but I've had anxiety around developing it. I'm scared my doctor will prescribe me sleeping pills. I'm scared I'll never be able to sleep again, and I'm scared this will stay with me my whole life. How do I leave this behind me? I'm so tired of feeling anxious, but I don't know how to stop it. Thanks for listening, as always. Anytime, Jake. And I'll say that the last sentence here was kind of the key sentence, where Jake says, "I have so much anxiety, and I don't know how to stop it." In a way that sums it up, because anxiety is an emotion. It's something we feel. It's a signal. It has a very practical purpose. So the mind produces this, there's a thought behind every emotion, right? So when the mind is a little bit afraid of something, and there's this component of uncertainty, ambiguity, I don't know exactly what it is I'm afraid of, but there may be many things, then we feel anxious. And anxiety is there to keep us, on the lookout, keep us alert, keep us monitoring for things. And that is very logical and very, very practical when there is a physical threat out there. Let's say, you're out camping and you hear like a weird sound, and it's like, it makes sense to be hyper alert there and vigilant and be anxious, because we literally keep ourselves safe that way. But the point I'm trying to make here is that anxiety itself is just very logical. It's just a signal. It's just a practical tool the brain has. And when we treat it that way, then it becomes fleeting. It's like we're camping, we hear the weird sound, we look out, oh, it was just our neighbor, cool. The anxiety goes away because it no longer has any purpose. But it becomes very different when we identify the anxiety, we identify the emotion as the problem. We're like, whoa, I don't want to have this emotion. And then there are thoughts behind the emotion, right? Which is kind of like, why can't I sleep? What if this happens? What if that happens? And then they produce anxiety. And if we're like, I don't want to have anxiety, I want it to go away, I want to stop it, I want to manage it, I want to keep it away, then it's basically the same thing as we're not listening to what the brain is trying to say. It's like, if we go back to the camping example, it's like we hear this weird noise and the brain says there's something weird going on outside. We're like, no, I don't want to hear it, I don't want to have anxiety, I don't want to feel it. Then the brain's going to be like, wait, this can be a real problem here. Why aren't you listening to me? There could be a bear outside. You got to listen to me. And they're like, no, I don't want to hear it. Then, now the point here is like, when you try to make the anxiety go away, then it becomes sticky, right? When we listen to the brain and we acknowledge what it's trying to tell us, then the thoughts and emotions become fleeting. So how do you do that? Well, I think a very practical way of doing it is just grab a pen and paper once a day and write down the things that are driving the anxiety. If it's, for example, thoughts like, what if my doctor writes a pill? What if I can't sleep again? What does happen? Just write those down as an act of listening to the brain, acknowledging that you're hearing these kind of warning thoughts that are the reason you have anxiety. And when the brain is like, oh, you're listening, you're paying attention, you're not trying to stop the anxiety, you're not trying to get away from these thoughts, then the brain is like, oh, I don't need to bombard you with these thoughts, you're listening, and then they go away. So paradoxically, when we don't try to stop anxiety, it becomes fleeting. So, and by the way, confidence, I think confidence, when nothing is wrong inside of me, there's nothing wrong with me, that confidence in that my brain and body is perfectly fine, that's helpful, that's good to know about. But oftentimes that becomes confused with the confidence to sleep, like I can sleep, I can make sleep happen, I know I can sleep tonight. That is sort of misguided, if you will, because nobody can. Nobody quote unquote should have that type of confidence, because nobody can make themselves sleep. It's just impossible. The whole reason there's insomnia is that we think there is a way to do that and we're trying to pursue it. So that type of confidence, if you have started to, if you think sort of like having started to build that type of confidence, the like I can sleep every night type of confidence, that is not a helpful path, because that's a path towards performing anxiety, and eventually you're not going to sleep well, and then that confidence is kind of like evaporated because it wasn't really a true thing. It wasn't real. Like nobody can do that. It was kind of like a mirage, a fiction over the brain, if you will. So I think it's just good to know that nobody can make themselves sleep. So that's not something we should try to build up some sort of confidence around, but rather just know that, know what we talked about here, know all we talked about in the channel. Education is good. Education is great, because that nobody can ever take away from that. And confidence that there's nothing wrong with you is good too. But there's nothing, we should not try to pursue a confidence in the sense that I know I can make myself sleep. That is not a helpful path, not a helpful path. So JK, I hope that this was helpful to you and anyone that tunes in. And with that said, we'll go to Fabien here. Fabien says, hello there. As informative and great as your channel is, thank you for the support, I face now a situation where I don't really know how to behave with my thoughts anymore, coming to the point where I tend to discriminate and analyze even my positive related sleep thoughts as a way of escaping the situation, effort, counter effort. Anyways, I'm seriously having a hard time now figuring my attitude as feeling neutral seems so out of question as I'm feeling exhausted. Is one supposed to practice positive reinforcement with positivity? And how can it not be a way seen as a way out for the mind? The mind is extremely tricky, and I'm having a hard time genuinely accepting, having an accepting attitude. The thought process is super intense all over the place, and the confusion level is very high. I'm starting to see that too much information is something the mind can use to make it even more confusing. Yes, I'm feeling very confused right now. I'm truly missing a sense of innocence regarding my sleep. What would be the best, simplest guideline for a very active thinking, intricate mind's mind? Thank you a lot. Anything, Fabien. I want to say that the overall thought process here is something that's very common, which is that, we often hear that we should have a positive attitude, or we should approach this with acceptance or things like that. And then that can so easily become sort of like efforts, like we're trying to be positive, we're trying to be this and that. The reality is that we have absolutely no control over our thoughts or our emotions, no direct control. So when people say, just be positive, and you're like, I'm trying to be positive, but it's not working, then that's not very helpful, because again, we have no control over that. What can be confusing is that it can seem like other people have control because other people are maybe positive and they sleep well and things like that. So it can seem like they have control, or I had control in the past. I was doing great in the past. I had control, but in reality, that's not the thing. It's the act of trying to have control that is producing so much struggle. So as we talked about already, like thoughts are fleeting by nature. It's when we try to control those thoughts that the brain like kind of produces more and more of them. So I think the key to this is self-kindness, is 100% self-kindness. When you see that nobody can control their thoughts, and I'm sort of confused and a little bit self-critical because I am not controlling my thoughts, then you're like, that doesn't make any sense. Nobody can do it. Why should I be hard on myself? Because I can't. Nobody can do that. So I think you're right, Fabien, that more information is not necessarily the best. But I think self-kindness is always really, really helpful. When you're like seeing this sort of from the outside perspective, like I'm trying to achieve something that is inhuman, that nobody can do. I'm trying to achieve this control. Then you can be like, why am I so hard on myself? I should just be kind to myself. And somebody said recently, like, try to think of how your grandparents would talk to you, and those kind, soothing words, like it's going to be all right, you haven't done anything wrong, etc. I think that is the way. And what we talked about just earlier about like taking some time to just write down your thoughts every day, 5-10 minutes, just to put them on paper and to kind of distance yourself from them, and listening to the brain, etc. That can really help. But otherwise, no effort needed at all. Oh, Jake is here live. Hi, Daniel. This will sound ridiculous, but I believe when this whole sleep thing started was when my anxiety shifted from my exams as I passed them all. I read an article about how Michael Jackson required propofol to sleep, which is what killed him, and convinced myself this is my future. Sometimes I read people's stories from this channel, and it brings reassurance. Whereas there might be another comment coming from Jake here, but yeah, I think talking about Michael. Oh, here's more from him. Other times they bring anxiety. I would like to get to a place where I can separate myself from other people's insomnia. For example, you deal with insomnia all day, but it doesn't affect you. Now, this is a great point from Jake, which is oftentimes when you are part of a community like this one, what's really helpful is that you see that I'm not alone. There's so many other people that are in my shoes or have been in my shoes, like people who went through this and now are doing really well. But it can also throw you off, because when you hear about someone who's doing well, it leads you to kind of examine yourself, and you're like, why can't I do it? What's wrong with me? This person is sleeping, or why can't I there? It can lead to performance anxiety. And when you hear about somebody who's really struggling, you're like, oh my gosh, I hope I don't go to that place. So you're absolutely right. There's a challenge when you are learning in kind of a community environment like this. So how can you like you say, kind of distance yourself from this? Well, there are multiple ways, but one of them is to kind of a practical thing is that this thing I call a sleep detox, where like I understand everything. I know where my anxiety comes from, my insomnia came from, but now it's maybe time to take a detox, and that would be like you take maybe a couple of weeks where you say, I'm not gonna tune into Daniel's YouTube channel, I'm not gonna read about sleep, I'm just gonna maybe get up at the same time every morning and like maybe not check the time overnight, something like that. But other than that, just do nothing else. Like that sleep detox can be really helpful. And the other thing is, I think just again, why I talk about so much here is that self-kindness component of like when you feel like, why can't I? Why am I not? Why that? Then you're like, but what is it I'm trying to achieve? I'm trying to achieve something that nobody can. So just like be compassionate about yourself, self-kind. And we think about Michael Jackson, then I think what I think of when I hear about Michael Jackson is that somebody can be like super accomplished, but still feel really the opposite. Feel like they maybe are an imposter, or they haven't achieved anything, or struggle with things. So it's always like how we look at ourselves is so much more important than how other people look at us. And if we can love ourselves, then it doesn't matter what other people think. So I think maybe, I don't know anything about Michael Jackson, but I think maybe if he had been kinder to himself, if he hadn't been so hard on himself, then he would have done really well. And I don't know why Michael Jackson passed away, but to my understanding, I don't, what I always say here is that insomnia is not harmful. We have plenty of evidence for that, so I know it wasn't that. But anyway, self-kindness, I think, would have helped Michael Jackson a ton. I really believe that. Okay, so Fabien talked about that. Okay, let's go with Ellie's question. Ellie says, hey, Daniel, so on Tuesday, I have one of my best nights yet. I remember the night before, I decided to just do exactly whatever I wanted to, which is something I've learned from you. And, well, I got great sleep. Coincidentally, this is exactly what I used to do before my insomnia. Shocking. Like clockwork, of course, I'm not getting that same quality sleep anymore. Feel like I've lost something or some piece of knowledge. Like I knew the formula before, but I can't remember it now. I remember this night before thinking, I will watch this movie, but I won't be watching it with intent of relaxation so I can sleep. And whatever that thought did to my brain worked so well. Since then, I've been trying to do the same thing, but I think now that my brain knows it works, there's more of a desire to get the results again. How can I continue the whole do what you want without an intention, without secretly intending? Another question is, I'm not sure if this goes for everybody else with insomnia, but I tend to be very restrictive with myself during the day and at night. Like I don't do and can't enjoy the things I used to be for insomnia. I guess there's this element of responsibility for my insomnia, like I need to be doing something to help the situation at all times. It also feels like if I continue life as I want to, doing the things I actually want to do, something will slip and I'll be worse off. I can't express how strong the responsibility I've created toward it feels. Literally like I have a baby now and I need to be taking care of it. Oftentimes I stray so far from reality, I can constantly be in this world of insomnia. It really makes me feel like sleep is all there is. Thoughts? This is so long, I'm sorry. Not at all, Ellie. This is really, really insightful and helpful. So I think two things I want to bring up here are, number one, magic. And then number two, we're going to talk about the kind of protective behaviors. So when, sleep truly, and you heard me say this a lot of times, Ellie, is it comes from nothing. It comes from the absence of effort and trying, etc. It comes like a rabbit comes off a hat. It comes from nothing, right? And that's what makes it so confusing, because when you have like what I call a magical moment is when you just enjoy your night and then you sleep really well, and it's surprising. It's like, whoa, I slept the whole night. I slept great. And then, of course, that's a magical moment when you see that sleep comes from nothing. But of course, the brain is going to try to figure it out, right? Because it wants more magic, right? So then it goes like, what did I do? Was it this? Was it that? Oh, yeah. It was because I wasn't trying to sleep. So now I'm not going to try to sleep, and that's going to work. That's going to be the thing. Now I figured it out. And then, of course, you don't sleep, because now you're what I call explaining away the magic, or actually, no, it's more appropriate is to say that you're not explaining away the magic necessarily, but you are trying to recreate it, right? You had a magical moment, and now you're trying to recreate the magical moment, which is like any other magical moment in life. Like you have this wonderful stroll with a friend that you haven't seen for a while, and then you say, let's do it tomorrow, and then it's just not the same, because you're trying to capture the magic, right? You're trying to recreate that magical moment, which just happened out of nowhere. Same thing here. So I think the key here is understanding this, that sleep came from nothing. And if I try to figure out why it happened, then nothing is gone. There's something there, and then you will not sleep as well. And the second thing is on a more practical level, is the fear that's always driving it. So when you're kind of like, I just want to enjoy my night and see whatever happens. Well, the thing that can stand in your way there is that, but you still have a fear of being awake. So whatever you do to become less afraid of being awake, so that when you are awake in the evening or at night, you transform that to something that's enjoyable, that's okay, well, then the fear of being awake will dissipate. It'll go away. So I think that befriending wakefulness is always super, super helpful. So I hope that helped, Ellie. And the second part was this. Yeah, very, very common. I actually have a client right now who I'm working with who said the same. She said that usually I'm home by 8. I don't do this, I don't do that, because basically these are protective behaviors, which feel like at least I have a little bit of if I do all these things, then at least I have some chance of getting a sufficient sleep. But in reality, those behaviors are the ones that are keeping you from seeing that you don't need to do anything for sleep. It's kind of like, if you're doing all these things, you disallow yourself from seeing the magic. It's sort of like if you did 8 things and then you slept well, then it's kind of like, this is explaining with the magic, by the way. If you did these 8 things, you had a ritual, you came home, you didn't go see your friends, you did this and that, and you sleep well, then it's like, of course I did, because of all these things, right? And then it doesn't allow you to see the reality, which is that in the long run, all these protective behaviors, they keep you in a state of hyper arousal, hyper alertness, vigilance, keeping track, etc. So courage is super important. Courage is super important. When you say, you know what, I'm going to go out with my friends, even if I may sleep less tonight, when you take that leap of faith, you're really courageous and brave, then you always win. Because if you end up sleeping little that night, well, at least you did something you enjoyed. And if you sleep well, then you see that, whoa, I didn't need to have all those protective things in place. Sleep comes from nowhere. So I hope that helps, Ellie. And thanks for your support. Okay, we have a live question here from My Angel Line. She says, hello, I have very strong insomnia. I sleep for 2 to 3 hours a night to many nights, more than 50 nights since December 24th till actually. What can I do to change this? I feel tired, mind and body. I wish you can help me. Thank you. Well, I'm sorry to hear this, My Angel Line, but I'm glad you're here, because I think you'll find that many people that have been in your place are here. And I say that because the more you see that there's nothing strange or unusual going on, just the same ordinary insomnia that many people have, it's much easier to see that just with education and self-compassion and support, etc., you'll get to a place where you sleep really well. So something that really jumps out is 50 nights and then December 24 and 2 to 3 hours. These are indicators of time, and it's, with insomnia, it feels like you've lost control of something. And by sort of keeping more attention to track the time, maybe keep a tracker, maybe see how much you slept and try to figure out why you didn't sleep more, and etc. That attention towards sleep is really what drives insomnia. And so one really good step is to step away from tracking and make a point of not knowing how much you sleep, like not actively checking the time. That is really helpful. That is the timeless way. And just learning, really, just spending time here, going to the playlists and learn in general. And if you find everything you need here, this is fantastic. I mean, this channel is there so that and anyone who finds the channel has everything they need to get to a place where they sleep really well. But if you want someone to work with, then of course I would love to work with you and anyone else that wants a little bit more support and guidance. You can just head over to our website, thesleepcoachschool.com, and you'll find ways you can work with myself. And if you choose to do so, I'll be excited to work with you and anyone else who would like that. So with that said, I hope this episode was helpful to anyone that submitted a question and anyone who tuned in. And I'll see you back tomorrow when I'll do another episode. That will probably be an Insomnia Insight, and then Friday I'll be back doing open class again. But anyway, thanks so much for tuning in, and have you back real soon. Bye now.